Good morning. Hello, I'm Tracy with TierraCast. It is time for our Tuesday morning live jewelry making demo. And hopefully you are watching this, well, not hopefully, you are either watching this on Facebook or YouTube. And if you're not watching us live, you're watching replays, welcome. And thanks for tuning in. We have, I think, a nice demo today. It's kind of a fun one, lots of tools. So I always like to demo lots of tools because, tools are fun. So this bracelet that was one of the projects that we designed when we launched our, hold on just a second. We launched a collection of components. We added a whole bunch of our existing products and also added in a few new products, all available in our sorry, I must not be warmed up yet, available in our antique pewter finish, which this launch was exciting for us because our antique pewter finish, hello Shakisha, I see you piping in, so thanks for being here. Antique pewter finish is an entirely in-house process for us. All of our components are cast here in Northern California, and lead-free pewter. And with our other finishes, we'd send the parts out for plating. Antique pewter finish, there's no out for plating involved. It's all done in-house, so it has a smaller environmental footprint, which has always been a concern for us. We've always been very conscious of the most responsible manufacturing processes that we could possibly. Sorry, if I'm not looking at you, it's because I'm starting to post some links in the comments. Hello, Peggy. So that's been a concern for the company for as long as we have been in operation. So this antique pewter focused collection is exciting for us. I'm going to adjust my screen. I need it. And I'm putting some links in the comments right now. The first one is for the project we're demoing. So that project is on our website in the inspiration section, and you can download a project sheet. So you can see all the details and download a project sheet. And then I also just posted a link to that La Pura Vida collection. And that just tells you, actually, I sent you to the collection, but I'm also going to post a link to the blog. And if you watch these regularly, sorry for the repetition. I post many of the same links in the comments of many of my demos because it's good information. So you can read all about our that collection in the blog link I just posted. You can see all the parts in the collection link I just posted, and then the project itself, which is fun. So this project, one of the new components that we included in this group of parts was a 6x2 millimeter barrel bead and a 6x2 millimeter crimp end. So these styles of beads are ones we developed a few years ago when we did our, now I'm questioning my recollection. We launched a barrel bead in our, what was the word? Dulce Vita collection. It was a collection a few years back that focused on textures that were inspired by polymer metal clay. So at the time, we included a little 4x2 millimeter barrel bead, and the intention was that you could use 2 passes of 2 millimeter round leather cord, or 3 passes of 1.5, or just the idea was a barrel bead that fit thicker materials. Eventually, we did a end cap that went with that barrel bead. Can't quite remember if we did it at the same time, but it may have been one of those things where we had the barrel bead and I demanded the production team to create a crimp end to go with it. So we had those in 4x2 millimeters. And what we added for this collection was a larger version. So this is a 6x2 millimeter. So it fits 3 strands of 2 millimeter cord or more if you're using a narrower cord. And, you know, braiding, 3 strands, braiding, right? So this bracelet is braided, and these beads and cord ends are crimped. And then one of the other components that we included is this is something we've had in the collection for a long time. It's a little blank charm that went along with our alphabet and symbol charms. And the intention for this little blank was that it could be stamped. Now, it's not like a traditional, if you do any kind of stamping, traditional metal stamping blanks are flat, just flat. Both sides are usually, I think they can be pewter, but often they're brass. I'm seeing a lot of people pop in. Thank you so much, everybody. Mary and Eileen and Kimberly and Emily and Patty. Hi, thanks for joining me this morning. So because that wasn't something that was in our wheelhouse to do something completely flat, this charm is slightly domed on both sides. Still stampable, but you have to make some adjustments to your technique, which I'll demonstrate. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera, and we'll start working on all of the fun things that this project involves. So I mentioned we're going to do a little stamping. And if you do any stamping at all, you're probably familiar with Impress Art. They are a wonderful company that just makes all the stamping stuff and has so much education. So if you're interested in stamping, Impress Art is I'm even going to throw a link in here if I can grab one very quickly. Impress Art is the place to go. They have all the tools, all the stamps, all the education. They're friends of ours. You know, we enjoy visiting with them when we have the opportunity, and we also work with them when we do our Mojo shows in Tucson. So there you go, a link to Impress Art. They're really, really valuable materials and information about all things stamping. I got oops, what's going on here? Oh, I guess I just had it upside down. All right, so we're going to be doing a little stamping, and we should start with that because for this, well, no, okay, wait, back up. What do we need for this project? We need 30 inches of 2mm round cord. We need 2 of our 6x2mm Jardin crimp ends, 2 of the 6x2mm Jardin barrel beads. We have these adorable new little moon and star charms. They were part of the new launch. Let's get them up close. And they're just a little kind of flat star and crescent moon shape embellished with a little crystal on one side. And we just adore them. They're so cute. So those were a big part of the creation of this design. I wanted to use those cute little charms. And then I wanted to stamp one of our little blanks. And one of the things that Impress Art has is a little crystal setter kit. So what that includes is stamps that just basically create a little round impression in your stamping blank, and then you glue a flatback crystal into that. And I happen to have this set that had 3 different sizes, and I used the largest one, which is a 4mm. Then this is a 2.5mm, and then this one, I don't even know how tiny this one is, 1.8mm. And those sizes correspond with common flatback sizes. So it's not like you get a stamp and then you have to find a flatback to fit. They tell you, and matter of fact, they include, if you buy the stamps, I'm pretty sure they include a little selection of flatbacks in there, at least this one did. So I used the 4mm punch, and I have some 4mm, what size are they? SS9? No, bigger than that. SS16. That's the crystal size. It's about 4mm. So the first thing I'm going to do is move some stuff out of the way because this is a lot of clutter. And then the first thing we're going to do is, you know how when there's a lot of clutter on the work surface, the camera does not know where to focus. So That's why I'm trying to clean that off a little bit. So I've got my little stamping blank. And what I'm going to do is just tape that. The loop on this charm is an opposed loop. So it sits perpendicular to the surface of the charm. So what I have to do is hang that off the edge of the charm. And then I'm just going to take a piece of cellophane tape. Cellophane. Who says that anymore? I'm going to take a piece of tape and just tape that down to my little bench block. I hope I've remembered to go through all the items we needed for the project. I think I probably missed a couple. We need crimp covers, 3mm crimp covers. We need some jump rings. I used our 4mm round jump rings. We talked about the punches and the flatback crystals. We're going to need a little glue. I'm going to use the GS Hypo Cement for gluing that crystal down. We need lots of fun tools like parallel pliers, and I'm going to use a Sharpie. Got our hammer and our bench block. So just lots of fun stuff to play with today. All right. So if you do a lot of stamping and you're working with the alphabet charms, which is fun, Impress Art has these little grid stickers that you can put onto your blanks to help you keep things lined up. Since I'm just doing kind of a thing right in the middle, I'm just going to kind of use the Sharpie to kind of make a cross on my blank to help me plant this thing in the center. And I've got it taped down pretty good, and I've got my 4mm punch, and I'm going to just kind of, it occurs to me this is going to be tricky to do with my camera right here. So I'm going to have to move this off to the side to do my when I actually hammer this, but you guys will get the idea and you'll hear it. So I'm going to take my punch and just line it up on that little crisscross I made the best I can. There will definitely be some adjustments required. Keep in mind that the top of that circle of the charm is up here underneath, kind of underneath where the loop is. So when I was first experimenting with this, I found it easy to end up off center and have my little punch too far down. And that's when I started adding the little crisscross to help me kind of keep that lined up better. So I'm going to move this away from the phone. So maybe just over here will work, and you guys can still see what I'm doing. I'm getting it lined up there. And because if you do stamping, you'll know that, and if you ever watch Rita, who is kind of the creative brains behind a lot of the Impress Art operation, she will tell you to make sure your stamp is perfectly straight up and down. And I'm going to start like that, but because this blank has a slight curve to it, I'm also going to tip it. You'll see me tip it a little bit. So sorry for the noise. You'll also hear Rita say one good whack. But in this case, look, you guys, I so was not lined up. But that's okay. We're just going to put this on there anyway. You'll hear Rita say to just do one firm whack. But because I'm tipping it and having to make up for that little dome, I end up hitting it more than that. So now I've got some glue in the little recess, and I'm just going to pop this little crystal in there. And you do want to make sure the recess is deep enough so that it holds it nicely. You could even just glue the flatback crystal on top. You don't need to have a punch there, but I wanted to play with this stuff, so that's what I did. And it does work. You know, you can see on this one that it kind of just sets the edge of the flatback down in there, so you don't see it really as much. Focus is just not as good when I try to get up close here, you guys, but you can see how it works. So I'm going to set that one aside to dry. That's all the stamping we're going to do for the moment. I set one up yesterday, used a clear crystal, and so it's nice and dry. So that's the one we'll actually use with our bracelet today. Little clear crystal. Okay. Let's see. I'm just gonna like glance through some of the comments here because it's always fun, you guys. And Mary says she's always amazed at how when people can get the little needle back in the GS hypo-cement tube and get that cap on. That was pure luck, Mary. I struggle with that just like everybody else. That was pure luck that I was able to do that so easily. All right, so we've got a crystal ready. This one's just going to set aside to dry. We don't want to use that right away because that hypo-cement needs time. So, but you guys saw the basic idea of what we did with the stamping. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take 30 inches of leather cord and cut those into, let's see, 3 equal pieces, right? So it's 30 inches, so I'm going to cut 3 10-inch pieces. I'm just grabbing my little ruler. Lots of times when I'm working with leather cord, I make sure that I cut the ends. Often I'm beading. I'm threading beads onto the cord, right? So I will often cut them at angles. You know what? I'm not going to worry. So I'm supposed to cut this in 3 10-inch pieces. My strand must have been not quite 30 inches, which is not really a concern. There's going to be leftover. I'm not going to worry about how this end is uneven yet because I'm going to be braiding it, and that will just take up. It will change the amount we end up with at the end. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. We'll trim as needed when we get there. So I was saying that I often will trim, if I'm working with leather cord and I know I'm going to be using beads, I'll trim these at an angle just to make it easier to string things on. In this case, I'm putting these right into one of those 6x2 millimeter cord ends. So I just line those up and tuck those right in here. It is absolutely an option to put glue in here. If you don't want to rely on the crimping, you can put glue down in here and just use that for securing the cords into the crimp end. I'm going to crimp it because it's fun to use these parallel pliers. Don't have to use parallel pliers. You could use flat nose pliers. Parallel is nice because it comes down with that even pressure. So I really prefer them when I'm using these crimp ends. So I crimp from one side, I flip it over and crimp from the other side. And I'm going to test it gently, really carefully, because if it's not quite secure, I don't want to pull these out. I'll feel if they're slightly loose and I'll do a little more crimping. These are good. I crimped thoroughly enough. If I was using flat nose pliers, I would probably also come in and crimp from this angle, just because you're not getting a parallel squeeze here because of the angle of those. So if I'm using flat nose pliers, I'm going to go around from a few more angles just to make sure things are nice and secure. All right. So our three strands are attached. And what I'm going to start doing now is just braiding. So the directions I wrote for this project make a 7.5-inch bracelet. So if you were wanting to make something slightly longer or slightly shorter, you'd want to pay attention to how long this part of the braid is. For a 7.5-inch bracelet, I'm going to braid for about a 1.75 inches. And my braid can be loose or it can be tight, but my length, whoops, wrong. My length needs to be about 1.75 inches. And remember, that's just for that 7.5 inch size. If you want to make your braid longer or shorter based on overall length of your bracelet, you can do that. Okay, one more. That is close enough to 1.75 inches. I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to take one of the barrel beads and thread that onto those 3/4 from the other end and slide it right up there, hopefully without my braid getting all loose. I'm going to slide it right up there like so. And I'm going to squeeze this this barrel bead right now, but not too tight. I don't want to crimp it so tight that I can't slide it and adjust, but it should be fine just to crimp it a little bit to keep it in place. Now this section of the bracelet has no braids. That's going to be where our embellishments are. So I'm going to string, whoops, you know what I didn't do in advance, which I meant to do? I meant to put some jump rings. Our crystal bead has an opposed loop. That's going to slide right onto the leather. The little moon and star charm need jump rings. I'm using our smallest round jump rings. They are, I think, 20 gauge wire. They're kind of nice, good size for this project. All right, so now I'm going to string those little charms onto the center cord. And I'm stringing the moon first. You could do the star first if you wanted, and then the crystal charm, and then the star. I'm just going to slide them all down, and then I'm going to string on a second barrel bead. Oh, Lorena is saying mine eventually fell off using geotype cement. I used 2-part. You know, when you're working with these crystals, the manufacturer always recommends a 2-part epoxy. So really, if you want to be super secure, 2-part epoxy is your best bet. She's right. But Lorena, I'm curious about, was this a flatback that you had glued to something? Is that what fell off? That is one upside of the using the stamping, the punch to create that little recess, because it'll just be a little bit more secure on the charm. All right, so now this is another place where you can adjust the length of the bracelet if you want. For this design and for the 1.25 inch, sorry, I keep looking back at the instructions to make sure that I'm not leading you guys astray with measurements and whatnot. So this is someplace where you could adjust the length, add length, or reduce length. For the 7.5 inch size, I positioned these 2 barrel beads about 1.25 inches apart. And then later on, I came in and we'll add the crimp beads to separate them. But right now, I'm just going to squeeze that second bead slightly in case I need to make adjustments later. I'm going to squeeze it enough where it's going to hold, but I might still be able to move it. I also want to make sure that my 3 strands are kind of pulled nice and straight. It's always good to give your leather cord some stretching before you finalize your project, so that it doesn't really stretch a lot after. So right now I'm just kind of making sure everything's straight, making sure my distance between the beads is good, and then I can start braiding again. And again, I'm going to go with that 1.75 inch length for this size bracelet. Lorena, what's wonderful about, she's saying I didn't even know that we could hammer TierraCast metals. That is one of the wonderful things about the antique pewter finish is we've done plenty of hammering and manipulating of our plated parts as well, but the lack of the plating on these ones, the antique pewter, just makes it that much nicer to be able to work with it. You don't have to worry about damaging any plating or cracking any plating. And especially for these little stamping blanks, we really do recommend using the antique pewter. We do make them in silver plated and gold plated because people may do other things with them. But the antique pewter plating, the antique brass, and the antique copper are really the better choices for stamping. They just seem to hold up better. All right, where am I? Am I at 1 3/4 yet? Pretty darn close. All right, so here's where I have to use, I'm going to put a little clip on here to hold my braids in place because I don't want them to fall apart. And then I don't want the braid to come loose. And then I'm going to come back here, make sure that I'm still at my desired length. And I can trim that off. That clip somewhere where it's going to hold. I hope you guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get that clip on there to so that my braid doesn't come loose, because I'm going to trim these beads now. Beads, sorry. I'm going to trim these cords so I can get that second cord in on here. The binder clip is probably not the best thing for this, but it's what I happen to find that worked here in my workspace. It's like, okay, the binder clip will work. I could have used tape, I think. And the trick here is you want these 3 ends to be flat as you're trying to tuck them into that cord end. What's happening here? There we go. That should work. There we go. Now I've got that second one tucked onto the end. Make sure everything's in there good. And using the parallel pliers again to secure them. All right, there's the little bracelet component, or the little main part of our design. Only thing left to do at the ends here is add the clasp ring and clasp bar. But what we're going to do here to hold these charms in place is I use 3mm crimp covers. Sorry, bring that comment back down so you guys can see what you're doing. Ooh, someone's got. Well, there's a question. What is a good 2-part glue? 2-part epoxies. What's the brand I usually buy? Let me grab it. Oh, Loctite. I usually buy Loctite. You can get it in different setting times. So if this is a 5-minute, which in my experience works really well with setting flatbacks and things like that, because you mix it up, you have 5 minutes to work with it really, and then it starts setting up and is not easy to work with, and then as it starts to cure. So you want to work within 5 minutes. Now this is a translucent yellow. You should get the clear. Why I bought the yellow, I don't know, but really what you want to get is clear if you're going to work with 2-part epoxy and crystals. They also come in like a 30-minute setting time and an hour. So if you're doing stuff that just takes more time, you can buy the longer setting times. So that's what I usually buy, is that Loctite. There's other brands. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one of these little 3mm crimp ends. I don't think I need the ruler anymore. I've got crimping pliers, and I'm just going to use the front notch here. I've got my crimp cover, which if you do a lot of crimping, you may or may not have ever used a crimp cover. Crimp covers are, here, let's see if this works better. Crimp covers are little, they're almost like, it's a crescent shaped bead that, God, the focus here is just so lousy, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know why. It's designed to fit over a a secured crimp tube and cover it. But I have found that they also, depending on what you're working with, they make really nice little decorative stop beads, especially on leather cord. So I've used them for this, every once in a while when it comes up. I just end up using them for this purpose, and it's kind of fun. So you can pop, it's a little crescent shaped component. So you just pop it over the cord. Make sure you can see the opening in the back. Make sure that the cord is all the way in there. And then to secure these, you can use the front notch of the crimping pliers, as I was showing you, because you don't want to use the back notch with that has the little tooth in it. That's used for securing a crimp tube. You want to use the front notch that just makes a little round shape. And I'm going to secure this first little crimp. Oh, okay. You know what? In my original design, I secured it on the outside of that, of the charm there. So let me just add another one here real quick. Rather than pry that other one off, I'll just add another one here. And I'm going to secure that according to my instructions in the original design. I'm going to secure that just about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of this barrel bead. So I'm just going to tuck that over. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to eyeball that. And then I'm going to come down with the front part of these crimping pliers. And I would like to make sure that this little opening stays at the back. So before I crimp it down too tight, I'm going to kind of rotate it and make sure that little opening is at the back of the design. And then I can come in and complete squeezing that down. And that's just about 1/4 inch from the inside edge of that barrel bead. And then I'm going to attach another one of those on the other side of the little cluster of charms. Sometimes these little crimp tubes or crimp covers will be kind of they'll get squeezed down, so they're not quite as open as they could be. I did that kind of quickly, but what you can do is just pop the tips of your chain nose pliers in there and pry them open. Lorena, TierraCast is a wholesale only manufacturer. I'm going to put a link to our, whoops. I'm going to put a link into the comments. Sorry, going slow here. That directs you to our store finder on our website. And that gives you a nice, it's a resource for finding stores that sell TierraCast products, retail stores. There was another question back up in the comments. Lorena's mentioning Deacon brand, two-part epoxy too, also a good brand. Tiny tip. Mary has a tip. If you're pre-making bracelets, then save the braiding until the end. Oh, you're so smart. So this is, Mary's talking about some kind of production work here. So she would do all this braiding kind of set it up so that she can adjust the size right before she, adjust the size to order. That's kind of smart. So smart, Mary. All right, so back to it. I'm placing the second crimp cover. I'm looking right now, I'm looking at the back of the bracelet so I can try and keep that opening at the back. And I just want to pinch that down enough to get it. Oops, maybe I should do that from the front. I think I've been doing it from the front. Why change things, right? Get that down on there. Pinch it down enough to hold it a little bit before you can kind of fine tune the placement. And then I can come into the back and pinch that closed. All right, so we're good. We have 2 of our little crimp covers placed. And then the last 2 are going to flank the center charm. So I've already got, remember I put that one on there because I was confused about where it went. So I left it. I didn't crimp it, but I left it on the cord. So this is where I would want to be watching the placement of my center charm, and I want to crimp down this crimp bead just on the other side of it. So really, the way I'm doing this particular design, all the little crimp covers are going to be about 1/4 of an inch apart. This may vary depending on, with your design, depending on how much length you're leaving here in the center part. I didn't crimp that down tight. I just crimped it slightly so that I can adjust it if I need to. And I'm going to put the other one right on the other side of that charm. And again, going to crimp it down, but not too hard. And then I can adjust the placement before I tighten those up. Make sure they're kind of evenly spaced. This gets a little bit cluttery working on this, but so you just have to be a little bit patient, kind of. I'm noticing that one of these crimp covers kind of is pinching the leather, so I can fuss with that and kind of, mess with it to make sure that the leather's tucked inside, or it's on the back of the bracelet. I can just not worry about it. The placement looks pretty good. I'm going to move them over a tiny bit, maybe. And then really finish those off. I really like using crimp covers for embellishment. I've done some fun stuff with, it's a surprising thing. People don't necessarily think of it. I've done some fun designs with it, or at least they're ones that I've enjoyed. Let's see. Mary is saying that she loves our crimp covers. She's usually, as like most people, I think, only use them to cover crimp tubes, but this is a fun way to use them. And we only make and sell a 3mm size. You can find bigger crimp tubes out there. I'm sorry, you can find bigger crimp covers. We only make a 3mm one. We used to make a 4mm one, but I guess we didn't sell enough of them, so we stopped making them. But you can definitely find ones in different sizes out there. All right, so, oh, that was silly. I was just started to say, so I'm using 1 jump ring to attach my my clasp ring, and then I realized that I had the clasp bar on there. 1 jump ring to attach the clasp ring. And then at the other one, I'll use 2 to attach the clasp bar. I like to use 2. You need to use more than 1, depending on what your clasp bar is attached to. If it's a very thin little design, you may be able to get away with 1 jump ring. If it's anything slightly thicker, you need the bracelet, you need at least 2 jump rings, because you need that that maneuverability. Some people prefer to use 3 jump rings to attach a class bar so that they will lay flat, if that makes sense. Because right now I have the loop of the crimp end. I have a jump ring sitting kind of facing end up towards us. And then I have another jump ring that would be facing flat towards us. And then that means the clasp bar is facing flat. So is facing end up at us. So some people like to add another jump ring here so that that clasp bar will be sitting flat. I don't typically do that just because, you know, the jump ring gives it wiggle room, so you don't really notice that it's sitting like that. Yeah, you guys were done. That's it for this design. It's pretty fun. It's pretty crafty, what with all the various tools and techniques. I enjoyed when I was working on this design. I had fun with it. I was really coming up with some variations. One of them ended up having a lot more beads on it, and I was hanging the charms from the different, there's 3 strands here in the center, right? And I was hanging the charms from the different strands and placing crimp covers accordingly. And at some point we decided, no, let's just keep the charms on the center strand so it's less busy. So then I had this bracelet that just had like a little pattern of crimp covers on it. So I just added crimp covers until I made a nice pattern I liked. So I guess that's also an option. This bracelet could just be a little pattern of the crimp covers. It was fun. If you don't want to use stamping on the on that center charm, this charm of ours, I forget what we call it. I should look, because otherwise, how will you guys know what to look for? We call this our Starry Night charm, and it was part of our Celestial collection. It's got a wonderful little crescent moon with stars in the background on one side and a little star burst pattern with a crystal in the center on the other. And that would make a great alternative to using a stamped and crystallized blank there at the center. If you're going to get into the stamping, you can do, you know, that's a whole other thing. I had some fun doing some examples. Let's get those off of there. I had some fun doing some examples before the demo yesterday. There are a lot of stamp punches available in all kinds of different themes. And of course, there's sets of letters. So you can do a lot with these little stamping blanks. Now, because they have that little bit of curve, for example, if I was to do one of these words like the hope, remember how when I was stamping the other one, I was saying that I have to rotate it a little bit. So that's what I did with this as well, is I taped it down, and I actually used Impress Art's little grid paper to line me up a little better. And then when I placed the punch on there, I hit it in the center, and then being very careful not to move it, I just kind of tipped it to the side, hit it again, and tipped it to the other side to hit it again. So I could get, I could get a good stamp of the word. And this one says hope, if you can't quite see it because of the focus. It's cute. And I also did love, of course, because how could you not? And then I used some individual letter stamps too, to just create some. I thought love, hope, and joy was a nice combination. So I did some individual letter stamps too. And again, because of that slightly domed shape, I did the center one, and then I did the outer ones and just tipped them a little bit to get my letters to the stamps to make a good impression. And then this one, remember I was talking about how they have those punches, how Impress Art has punches that fit different size crystals. So this is one of the tiniest ones. That was really fun to pop a tiny crystal in there. So possibilities. guys. That's really all I've got for you. This project was fun, like I've been saying, because of all the different fun tools to use. We do have another design in that 6x2 millimeter barrel bead and crimp end. This is our distressed 6x2 millimeter. So in case you wanted to work with this idea but didn't want to use this style of bead and crimp end, we do have this. It's a distressed texture, goes real well with our hammer tone products, and slightly more neutral. So also a good option. I think that's all I got for you guys. Let's see. I'm just reading what Kimberly's saying here. Oh yeah, I'm talking about, she makes bracelets for pet shelters. And she's thinking of a fur baby design. That sounds great. I would love to see it, Kimberly. Well, if you guys ever work with Emily, I do too. I like that just the crimp covers version, and I'm actually gonna wear that one today. If you guys create, I'm switching my camera. If you guys work with these projects that we do our demos on, if you work with them and create variations and then decide to post them, please tag us or let me know, because we love to see them. We love to see what jewelry makers do with the inspiration projects that we come up with. So we consider our inspiration projects jumping off points, but really inspiration for you guys. And then you guys, put your own stamp on them. So thank you, you guys. That was fun. And I will let you guys know what I've been posting. So we always do our live stream demos on Tuesday mornings. I've been posting that event info on Monday. So watch for our next one next Monday. And have a great week. Hope you guys have lots of create time and make lots of great stuff. And we'll see you later. Thank you.